Okay, here we are with Sam Baker for part 3 of Sam's life story. What an interesting story. Sam is 98 years old. He is a World War II veteran, and I met him in learning about his second book that he wrote, which we are launching, Oscar the Mouse. And I was so intrigued with his story, and I ran across some other veterans who wanted to hear about what it was like for him going through his life. So, Sam, I'm going to let you take it and tell us about. You got to watch the other 2 videos if you want to know about Sam's childhood during the Depression, all of that, and then basic training, going to college. And here we are now, and Sam is heading into the next segment. So, take it away, Sam. Tell us about Quantico.
Well, once we finished boot camp, we all loaded on a train, a very old coach, and rode to Quantico, Virginia, which is about 30 miles south of Washington, D.C. We arrived there with only the dungarees that we had in boot camp. We had no other uniforms, no clothes, civilian clothes. We had our duffel bag with our underwear and things of that nature. They marched us off of the train into a barracks, and us with uniforms, the Marine Corps green. We started training there. Training in Quantico was, as I labeled it, to see whether or not you could take all of the crap that they could throw at you. For instance, in the morning, each of us had a day in which we were in charge of our whole group of potential officers. And you got your instructions from the sergeant. For instance, today I was in charge and I got the instruction we had to have a small pack on our back, which they gave us. So we go downstairs, we are on the 3rd floor, we walk down, all standing by ready for exercise in the morning with a pack on the back. The lieutenant, and I'm there and I report, sir, all present accounted for. And he says, what in the hell are you doing with a pack on your back? Well, the sergeant interrupts because I can't say anything bad against the sergeant. He says, I thought that was your instructions. No packs. So he tells me, dismiss the squad and prepare for no packs. So I turned around and said, "Attention, you'll be dismissed. Go up and remove your packs and return to him." So we race to the top, come back down, get in line, and then I report to the lieutenant, all present accounted for. Then the captain comes up and he salutes the lieutenant and he says, what in the hell are they doing without packs? So the lieutenant doesn't say anything about that. He turns around to me and he says, dismiss the squad to return to the barracks and put on packs. Well, that's 3 trips up and down 3 flights of stairs, just to aggravate you, I guess. Then we got down there, we start running. We thought that our drill instructors and sergeants were the best athletes in the world. They were running all these miles with us, making us run until we could fall out. Only for us to discover a few weeks later that they were changing sergeants in front of us. And then that sergeant dropped out behind us so we couldn't see him. He got in a Jeep, drove to another location, parked the Jeep, got out, and assumed command again.
Wow.
Quantico was trying to find out. There were a lot of us. They all couldn't be officers. They were trying to weed out by some means who was going to make an officer. For instance, they took us out in the field to show us how to put on about demolitions. They gave us a small block of explosive, and a primer cord and a cap, which we inserted into the explosive, put the cord in, crimped it, and then they gave us matches to light, and then we ran away and it exploded. And they watched us to see if we were nervous. My bunkmate was a small guy from New Jersey, and they called him in and said, sorry that he has to leave because he was too nervous to handle explosives. He said to them, do you know what I was doing before I came into the service? I was boiling ether. Well, nobody knew what boiling ether was, neither did I. And he says, when you boil ether, you have about a half a degree between boiling it and exploding it. That didn't make any impression on him. He left. We got through. They eliminated about a third of the class. But one Saturday, I was on my way to the PX to buy some items, and there coming down the walk was JT Black, a football player from Mississippi State. And I stopped and saluted him, and JT says, Blackie, what are you doing here? Blackie was the name they called me when I was working down at the stadium because my hair was so black. And I said, trying to get a commission, sir. And he says, who's your lieutenant? And it was a lieutenant standing next to him, Lieutenant Harrison. And I said, Lieutenant Harrison, sir. He turned to Harrison, not so much as a question, but more as a order. He's going to pass.
Great.
And I saluted him. Well, it did so that I passed. After you became an officer, you stayed there for a few more weeks in which they taught you how to be an officer. At the end of that period, everybody got assignments posted on the board except 10 of us. And we went to the sergeant and said, where are we going? He said, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. We said, when we're going to know? You'll know. Don't be so hesitant. Well, the day before everybody was leaving, they had their orders. They knew they were going to this camp. They know they were going to this point of demarcation. Everybody knew what they were doing. So then the lieutenant calls us in. He said, all 10 of you were going to MIT for a year of electrical engineering to become radar officers in the Marine Corps. But we just notified today that they have enough, so you're not going. What an opportunity to miss going to MIT for a year in electrical engineering. Now we all got together and we just determined that we all had scored very high on the aptitude test. I scored 142. I think the highest was 147. That's a fire alarm bell in my quarters. So I was assigned to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina for engineering training, as were a couple of other officers. We packed up all in our now second year lieutenant uniforms and caught the bus over to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Got off the bus. There were people there, and they asked what we were doing. Showed them our orders. They put us in a Jeep, loaded all of our gear there, drove us into headquarters. We met with an officer, and he said, we don't have an engineering training here. What we're going to do is give you a Jeep and show you where we have engineering projects going on. And the captain so-and-so will be in charge of you. Report to him every morning. He's down at the ammo dump. And here's where the BOQ is. You'll go there and get a quarters. So I got quarters there. And the next morning, I drove down to the ammunition dump, and there was his lieutenant. And he gave me a map of all the engineering projects on the base. And he says, come to me every morning, and then you're on your own. So the first thing I looked on there, desalination plant. I had no idea what that was. So I took my map and I drove down there, and it was a sergeant running a machine that boiled the water and taking the power from the machine, running cool ocean water around the tubes, condensing the steam, which was fresh water, and pouring it into this canvas tank. The water was good. I drank some, but the salt overflow was going there. There was something red down in there. And I said to the sergeant, what's that? He said, it's a crab. I said, is it good to eat? He said, it's delicious. I said, where do you get them? He said, the CCC's dug trenches on the flats, salt on the tidal flats, so that the water would drain and the mosquitoes and bugs would grow. So I said, how do you catch them? He says, there's a net, go find one. So I did, and I found one, put it in the brine, cooked it. It was delicious. Crab meat.
Wow.
I went there every morning.
Wow.
The next thing I saw was a Bucyrus Erie scraper and dump device. So I drove over there. Here was this enormous international tractor pulling a Bucyrus Erie dump, which was a machine that had a sharp edge on the bottom and a blade that went down. And what you did, you lowered the scraper, it scraped the earth, which piled up in the back. When you thought you were full, you dropped the blade, you then lifted the whole machine. Using the tractor, you took it to where you wanted to do, tilted the machine and opened the blade to evenly distribute the earth you had picked up, and so you could build a runway. And I watched him. I climbed up on the tractor with the driver, watched him do it, and I asked him if I could do it too. And of course, I wasn't any good at first, but he instructed me, and as I worked, the second day I became pretty good at it. And then I said, is there an instruction manual? He says, yes, there's one in the office. So I went back and asked the captain, can I have the instruction book? And he said, sure. So I took it home and I read it that night. And it says there were bearings on where the blade came that controlled the blade. There were 2 bearings, and they should be inspected every month. The picture of them shows that, but they were very big bearings. So I asked the sergeant, when was the last time you inspected the bearings? He says, oh, Lieutenant, look at the size of them. It'll take years before they wear out. I said, but the book says they should be inspected. Yes, he says, I know that, but we don't have a wrench. I said, where do you get a wrench? You have to go down to headquarters, and they'll direct you to where to put it on in. So, I mobility. I drove down to the office there, and I said, I need a wrench. And the manual there had the number. And she said, oh, okay. Here's a form you fill out. I filled it out. She says, okay, come back in about a week or 2 weeks. We'll have it for you. So I did other things. I did explosives. I went to, they were rebuilding part of the officers club. I saw how they were doing that to give me some insight as to how you do building modifications and all. Every night when I went back after to go to dinner, and on the way back from dinner, I noticed there was a card game in the lounge of the officers' quarters. And so I watched, and it was a warrant officer that was winning every night. So one night after the game, I went up to him and I says, you know, you're winning every night. Is there a secret? He says, no, I have just a rule that I don't stay in a game unless I have Jack Sabella. So I said, but it takes a long time to get them. He said, yeah, but you may lose a little money on your ante, but you make it up by winning. So I said, do you mind if I sit in opposite you so that we're not next door to one another and play the game? And if you stay in, I'll drop out regardless of my hand. Okay. Well, it worked. I started winning money. I had money. This was great. And then I went down to the captain one day, and he said, "There's a telephone call from the supply. Your wrenches are there." So I called him up and I said, "I'll come get my wrench." She said, "Wrenches?" I said, "How many?" She said, 144.
Oh no!
I said, "What?" I said, "I'll need a flatbed." She says, "That's absolutely right. They weigh 65 pounds apiece."
Oh my goodness!
I went down there with quite a while to load them all on that. And I said to her, "What happened?" She said, "Well, somebody in the base here figured if you needed one, somebody else may need one." So they ordered a gross. Well, we dumped them all. We got to Bucyrus area. We dug a big ditch, big hole. We unloaded all but one. We backfilled it over, and I took the wrench to the sergeant. We jacked up the thing, and we pulled out the bearings. They were just perfect, and we put them back on again. Then I went to the captain one morning, and he said, "Sam, have you ever detonated explosive?" I'd only done it twice, but I was. The Marine Corps says, don't let people fool you. Don't say that you didn't do things. So I said, "Sure, I know how to do it." So he said, "We've got some dynamite we need to explode." So he says, one of the people will take you down into the bunker, and we'll load it on your Jeep. Well, they went into the house. They came out with two boxes in the back, and they gave me some primer cord and a cap. And I had seen a pine tree back in the woods that had a hole underneath it. I thought this was ideal. We could put the two boxes under there, and we could send the tree flying. So I drove there, and I took a screwdriver and opened the box, and lo and behold, they were moist. The nitroglycerin had leaked out.
Oh no!
They could have exploded just by a bounce with the Jeep. Well, I gingerly took the boxes, put it under the tree, took out one, put the cap in there, put the primer cord in, stretched it all out to the Jeep, and ran and hollered, "Fire in the hole." Little did I know that tree was on the glide path to the airport. Where the tree went up, it went about 50 feet above the forest and settled back down. But a plane came in shortly before that, and the tree came up, and he noticed it and reported it. Well, the colonel called me in, and he said, "Boswell, yes, sir. Did you know it was on the glide path?" "No, sir. I'm in the middle of the woods. I have no map of the airport." Well, I guess he bought my story. But on Friday, I got orders to Camp Lejeune, Camp Pendleton, North Carolina.
Sam, that is such a great story. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to imagine you with that tree. I knew there'd have to be something with that tree going up in the air. So this was all of these things happened while you were at Quantico. I mean,
Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Oh, in North Carolina. Okay. So we may not even be to the end of this story. Do we have a ways to go here? Um,
No, there were four of us assigned from Camp Lejeune to Camp Pendleton. Jack Klein had a car, a Chevrolet, before the war, and he said to us, "If you'll get the gas, I'll drive out to Camp Lejeune." Well, I knew a girl in El Paso. We had to go through there. I said, "Okay, I'll call Amelia and see if she can get dates for on the way." So uh, Pittsburgh, I was from near Memphis. So we would meet, three of us would meet Jack in New Orleans, pick up Bradley in um, Beaumont, Texas, and drive across to Camp Pendleton. I got the train to Memphis, got a cab to the airport, took my first airline flight to New Orleans on a Chicago and Southern, which is now Delta. Russell flew down. I met him at the airport. Jack met us outside. We drove to Beaumont, picked up Bradley, and started out. The first night we stayed in Houston, and Jack said, "I read where there's a road all around the city. I want to drive it." And it was a freeway all around the city. That's probably downtown now. And then we took off. We got to El Paso. Mia was a beautiful little girl. Uh, she wasn't innocent in me, but I was innocent in she got dates for the other three. We had them the next morning. We're downtown looking at El Paso. There's an officer there, and he says, "Would you like to go to Mexico?" It was off limits. He says, "No, I can give you a pass." Well, we went across, and there was a store with all the things that they made, moccasins, robes, things, anything. So we went to one store and priced it. We went to the next store and priced it. Went back. This guy came down. Went the back. This guy came down. This guy says no. We went over. That's no. So we bought from him. Get to this guy, and he said, "See, if you'd have lowered your price a little bit, you could have had all these sales." He said, "What difference does it make? I own both stores." We felt
oh
like,
gosh.
well, it may not have been true, but we felt like that. So the next morning, we got in the car early, and we got to Tucson at noon. It was hot as hell. We didn't know what to do. We had a desert to cross, but we wasn't going to go in the middle of the day. So we asked the policeman, "What do we do?" He says, "You go in the movie, go to sleep, get up, come out, have something to eat, buy 2 water bags, fill your car with gas, and go across the desert at night." We did that. The theater was cool with a swamp cooler, they call it, a water cooler that they sucked air through the falling water. We got to the desert. We did all right. We got to Yuma. We crossed. On the other side of Yuma was a wood plank road for a while through the sand dunes. We got to Camp Pendleton late that afternoon, and there was one permanent building. The rest were all tents, and we saw a lot of the people from our officer training program from our group, our class, were there. And of course, Jack had a car, and we settled in, and we went out as soon as we could into Capistrano, where the swallows come back to Capistrano.
Oh,
Jack,
that's a neat place, is Capistrano. I've been there. So this was your new place?
this was new
This is
Camp
where you were going to be. Okay.
Camp Pendleton for to to collect until we to move overseas.
Okay, I think this is a good place for us. Must be a sign. So, Sam, we're going to pick up at this place on our next talk. So, I hope people will tune in. If you haven't yet liked Sam's page, you need to like it and then hit the little bell, because that'll give you any new videos that are coming out right away. It'll come to your e-box. But keep in touch here. You can also get in touch with Sam by going to sambakerbooks.com. You can hear all the stories and oh gosh, he's been interviewed by all kinds of places. So go and check that out. You can get both of his books there as well as on Amazon. So Sam, thank you. I can't wait to hear the next leg of your life. So
Thank you, Linda.
All right.
Stay safe.
Thank you. You